Today we're going to identify some hand tools that you'll be using in this module, also cover safety, and identify the parts of a small gas engine. You'll notice that I'm wearing safety glasses because safety glasses are an important part of this module to protect your eyes. There's always a chance of eye damage or injury occurring whenever you're working on something. You should also plan on wearing safety glasses if you do any type of work at home that involves any eye hazards. The tools we're going to start with are laying here on the bench. This is a pair of slip joint pliers, and pliers are used for grasping things or pulling things. They should never be used on a bolt. Next we have a pair of water pump pliers, which are used for grasping round objects or pipes. These are adjustable. This is a combination wrench. It's called a combination wrench because it's actually two different types of wrenches in one. This end is called an open end wrench. This end is called a box wrench. A wrench should always be used on bolts to loosen or tighten them. This can be used with either the box end or the open end. Screwdrivers come in two different types. Standard screwdrivers, which fit slotted screws, and they come in various lengths. And the other type of screwdriver is called a Phillips screwdriver. This is a type of cross-point screwdriver, and it's used on Phillips screws. Another tool that we can use to loosen bolts are sockets. Sockets are the same shape as the head of the bolt. A socket attaches to a ratchet simply by sliding onto the ratchet. If the ratchet is too close to the bolt or there are obstacles in the way, you can add an extension between the socket and the ratchet. The ratchet extension and socket can be used to loosen bolts up. Whenever you loosen a bolt, they should be loosened by going to the left. You might remember that left and loosen both start with an L, and that'll help you remember which way to go. There is an adjustment on the top of the ratchet so that you can determine which way the ratchet is going to move. Whenever you loosen a bolt, you're always going to be going counterclockwise. To tighten a bolt, you'll be going the opposite direction, which is clockwise. The adjustment on the ratchet will need to be changed so that the ratchet will ratchet in the other direction. And you might remember the correct way to tighten a bolt because right and tighten rhyme with each other. And again, you place the socket on top of the bolt, and this time we're going to go clockwise to tighten the bolt. Bolts should just be snugged up with the ratchet and socket. And we have some measuring tools here. This is a compression gauge. It's used to measure the compression inside the engine. This reads out in pounds per square inch. On a small engine like this, you probably will have a reading somewhere in the 50 to 100 pound range. An automobile engine could be in the 150 to 200 pound range. On the bottom of the compression gauge is a small valve, much like you'd have on your bicycle tire to fill the tube. Pressing that valve will release the pressure from the gauge and let the gauge reset to 0. We also have an ignition tester, and you'll notice that this ignition tester looks much like a spark plug. It doesn't have any threads on the bottom, and it doesn't have the ground electrode, but it does have the center electrode like a regular spark plug does. When you're using this ignition tester, you're going to use the alligator clip on it to attach to one of the head bolts. This is very easy to do. You just squeeze it so that it opens and then attach it to one of the head bolts. We also have a torque wrench. The torque wrench is a measuring device that is used to measure the amount of torque or twisting effort applied to a bolt. The cylinder head bolts on the small engine that you're going to work on require that they be torqued down to a certain amount. And this is the tool that you'll be using to measure the amount of torque so that you correctly tighten the bolts up. If you don't tighten the bolts correctly, you can damage the cylinder head or even the cylinder block. Now we're going to proceed on to identifying some parts on the small gas engine that you're going to be working on. You'll notice that the engine is sitting on a stand. The stand is there for you to make it easier to work on the engine. Okay, some of the basic things about the engine. This knob attached to the rope is called the recoil starter. It's placed inside this portion on the side of the engine, which is called the flywheel shroud. Inside is the shroud is the flywheel. Once you remove the flywheel shroud, you'll be able to see the flywheel very easily. On the top of the engine, we have the cylinder head. This has fins on it to aid in cooling the engine. In the center of the cylinder head is the spark plug. The spark plug wire comes from the magneto, which is located down by the flywheel. This is what supplies high voltage electricity to the spark plug to ignite the air-fuel mixture in the cylinder. The gas tank, where fuel is added to the engine. The carburetor on this engine is this section right in here, mounted above the fuel tank. The air cleaner is above the carburetor. Inside the air cleaner is an air filter. The air filter cleanses the air before it goes into the engine. I'm going to rotate the engine around so we can look at some of the other parts of the engine. Looking at the front of the engine here, this portion is known as the cylinder block. We have an oil filler cap on this side of the engine and also on the other side. Here we can also see some of the cylinder block, and it also has fins to help in cooling, much like the cylinder head does. Sticking out from the side of the engine is the crankshaft. If you have this type of engine on a lawnmower or a mini bike or something like that, this is the part of the engine that a pulley would attach to. The crankshaft goes through the side of the engine, which is called the side cover. This is removable, and it has 6 bolts that hold it on. The muffler is located up near the air cleaner. This is where the burnt exhaust gases exit the engine. The muffler is basically a device to cut down on the noise that the engine makes. Now, your teacher is going to ask you questions about where the various parts of the engine are, so make sure that you are familiar with all the parts of the engine. The last thing I'm going to show you in the videotape today is how to remove the spark plug and use the compression gauge. To remove the spark plug from the engine, you're going to use the spark plug socket and the ratchet. These two tools need to be put together so that you're ready to use them. To remove the spark plug from the engine, you first need to remove the spark plug wire from the spark plug. That can just be set aside. Next, you want to put the spark plug socket on top of the spark plug, and make sure that you keep the spark plug socket straight up and down while you're using it. You may need to adjust the ratchet so that it will turn the correct direction, and then loosen up the spark plug. As soon as it's loose, you can remove the ratchet from the spark plug socket and then use your hand to remove the spark plug from the cylinder head the rest of the way. Spark plug can be removed from the engine. And then to do the compression check, you take the compression gauge and insert it in the spark plug hole. When you and your partner are doing this, you should have the engine on the floor so that one of you can stand on the board holding the engine stand and firmly hold the compression gauge into the cylinder head while the other one pulls on the starter rope. As you can see, we get a compression reading. To release the pressure from the compression gauge, take the compression gauge out of the spark plug hole and press the little lever down at the bottom. After you've completed the compression check, you want to reinstall the spark plug in the cylinder head. It should be started by hand and turned down until it's finger tight. Next, take the ratchet with the spark plug socket installed on it again. Adjust the lever on the ratchet. Place the spark plug socket on top of the spark plug and just tighten the spark plug up till it's snug. Remove the ratchet from the spark plug socket and put the torque wrench on the spark plug socket. We're going to use the torque wrench to torque the spark plug down to 80 inch-pounds. As soon as the spark plug is torqued to 80 inch-pounds, the spark plug socket and torque wrench can be removed from the spark plug, and then the spark plug wire reinstalled. If you have any questions about any of these activities,